Ah, there you are. I was expecting you. You see, I brought a tome about summoning and dark thaumaturgy. We could try to summon a demon tonight, you know. However, before I begin to introduce you into the mysteries of the dark thaumaturgy, I actually wanted to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing, or otherwise you may... What? Oh, I see. You lack a bit more knowledge than I thought you would. Well. At least you announced yourself properly this time. Don't forget it is I, or Carisper, your guide in the Sanguine Archives, in which we explore the lore of this world of darkness from a perspective of and a focus on us, vampires, mainly Clan Bali. So let me be your guide through the memories of the blood for tonight. Follow me. Oh, what's this, you ask? We will get to that very shortly, because in tonight's venture I think I have to explain to you what exactly vampires even are. It seems whoever introduced you here was a bit lacking in that, which is really a shame, but not a big mistake. I'm here to educate you after all. So, let's begin. What are vampires? Well, there's a lot of myths about them out there, some of which we spread actually to make mortals less likely to believe that nonsense, and indeed less careful when they encounter one of us. So most things that you have heard about vampires are just bullshit, if I may say so. It's an interesting term these days, I think. That's how you say you're completely wrong, right? Yeah, I hope so. So, what is true about vampires? Well, vampires are cursed. They say that we go back to Cain, the biblical Cain, the one who slew his brother, the first murderer, and was cursed by God accordingly. I don't want to go into too much detail on his story though. We will maybe another time. The important thing is that he learned how to embrace from demons. Yes, the very Cain, our all great father, our ancestor, the eldest of the eldest. Indeed, the very first vampire was an infernalist, just like we are. You see, he was cursed by God to only drink blood, only eat ashes, gaining his sustenance only from the blood of the living, which is true for us as well. You can feed on animals if you like to, but that won't sustain you much. You may want to drink from humans. However, not all humans give you the same amount of sustenance. You can drink from lowlifes, and they will give you some sustenance, more than animals at least. But if you want the good stuff, you have to go for people who eat well, who are well trained, fit and healthy. The less healthy they are, the less sustenance you gain from them. And the more you drink in quantity, the more sustenance you gain as well, though you may not want to kill them when you drink. Not that I care, but you know, if you have a live human, lock him up and you can drink night after night after night if you need to. They will replenish blood if you feed them. You can kinda use them like cattle if you want. One of the terms we use for humans is blood dolls, after all, for a reason. If you kill them, it's just a bit of a waste. But let's go back to the topic at hand. You see, vampires are indeed undead. We die in the so-called embrace, which is when you completely empty a human and then feed him your blood. He will rise as a vampire, puke out his organs and all kinds of intestines, and remain as a kind of alive thing. The good thing about is that you gain some kind of immortality. You stop aging because you know you're dead. And unless you are from a few clans like the Samedi, which is actually a bloodline, you do not compose at all. You do not rot, you do not decompose. You are just what you are when you die. a bit paler maybe, a bit more corpse-like. You lose your body temperature, which will be the room temperature for wherever you are in. You will be very, very, very vulnerable to sunlight, which can kill you in an instant. You don't want even a single ray of sun on your skin. That can and very likely will devastate you. However, there's other things that you have to keep in mind as well. Because when you become a vampire, there's something growing inside of you, in here. It's called the beast. If you don't feed well, if you are injured or frightened, it may take over your body, your mind. You won't be able to remember anything, but you are the one responsible for everything the beast did while it rode you. Now, there is multiple ways to deal with the beast and to tame it, but that's a topic for very, very soon. Let's just say that the beast can be controlled by either trying to stay human, which is of course kind of laughable given that you're a blood-drinking monster that kills them regularly. Doesn't quite function to stay humane and morally good if you're a vampire just killing people now and then. You will commit all kind of sins anyway, so there's other ways to keep it in check, called the roads. Some call them the roads to enlightenment, and there's a vast amount of them. The important thing is that they give you a moral guideline. As long as you adhere to it, it will help you keep the beast in check, and you look more alive as well. Those roads are also a thing that I may go deeper in the future. Just know that each clan of vampires has their own, though you can adhere to any that you come across and actually believe in. Which brings me of course to the clans, but before that, one important thing. Vampires do not eat, they do not drink except for blood. You also lose a lot of usual mortal interests, and you definitely lose most of your bodily functions. Which is why we disguise, and that's why I'm wearing this thing, you see? I was told that mortals these days wear those things, whatever they are, sticky, yucky things, on wounds that they have. It apparently stops the bleeding, which is a shame really, but you know, if it looks like I'm bleeding and injured, I'm definitely not so likely to be discovered as a vampire. After all, vampires usually do not bleed when you stick a sharp thing into them. Now, it's also the same reason why I'm wearing those glasses. You see, mortals wear them if they have a bad eyesight. And of course vampires do not have a bad eyesight. Indeed, our eyesight is vastly superior to those of humans. We can see in almost complete darkness. We can see like a predator in the night, with very sharp senses and eyes. But those glasses make you look more vulnerable, more, or better said, less suspicious. They make you look more a brainy type of person, lacking physical strength and skills, which is of course absolutely what you want your enemies to think of you, so that they think that they can just overpower you and then they're in for a surprise. It's also the same reason I'm trying to do this, what's it called? Oh yeah, breathing. You see, vampires don't need to breathe either. There's just no reason to. We are walking corpses. However, if you inhale and exhale regularly, you can actually make people believe that you are alive and need to breathe, which helps just as much as this redness under your skin. It can be made supernaturally. It's called blush of life. It can also be called, well, let's not go into that much detail, but there's other ways. There is this makeup thing that women use that you can put on that also helps with making you look a little more alive and not as pale as you are. You definitely want to pass as a mortal. Why exactly I will get into very soon, but there are other advantages to being a vampire, or Cainite as they call them, as Cain is the ancestor and thus Cainites are his offspring. You know, actually this thing starts bugging me. It's quite... God, it's sticky. I hate those things. Better now. Okay. Where was I? Vampires are not only unaging, we are immune to diseases as well. Normal diseases, that is. There are supernatural ones that the Bali can conjure up that will absolutely hit immortals as well. We can, however, spread disease. If you drink from a diseased human and then bite another, you may actually just spread the disease, which is, again, something you don't want. You don't want to raise suspicion, and you absolutely do not want the mortal affairs, the departments that they have, FBI and whatnot, to go around sniffing where this mysterious illness came from. You also get enhanced physical attributes. Every single vampire is stronger, more resilient, and faster than a human is. We also have a much higher pain tolerance and can't be killed as easily. We can be destroyed, that is true, but what would usually kill a human won't kill you. After all, you don't have a real use for your organs, except for your heart. So any shot that would kill a mortal by rupturing a liver or something will just do nothing to you at all. A shot to the face, though, especially with a shotgun, that can destroy you. It doesn't have to be, though, because our kind is very resilient to all damage that is kind of bashing against your body. Meanwhile, things that slash and cut and pierce, like knives and swords, those are much more difficult to actually withstand. And then there is things that cause damage that is almost unhealable even to our kind, like fire or certain types of magic. Electricity apparently does the same. Now these wounds can be healed, they will take much longer though. Talking about healing, that's another thing that vampires have above humans. We can heal most of our wounds night by night. If you sever an arm, you can just regrow it. If you happen to have a hole in your body, you can just close it. If you have burn marks, you can heal them, though it may take a few months to do so. You are static, which means that you won't be able to grow out your hair because it just stops growing. The same goes for your nails. I hope you aren't too fancy about such things. But the real thing that sets vampires apart from humans is the ability to use the blood and its potency. You see, the curse is in our veins. There is a few theories what exactly that is, and I may go into it more another time. For now, there is mages, humans that can use magic to their advantage in all kinds of ways, but they also have a problem, which is called paradox, which means if a mage pulls too hard at the strings of reality, they snap and hit the mage right in the face, which is why mages become less and less powerful as time goes on, and less humans believe in magic. It's the very reason I decided to become a vampire, because I was a mortal mage once, to be more precise, Order of Hermes, House Titalus. And yes, I mentioned I was also amongst the Knight Templar. There are mages pretty much everywhere. The important thing though is that the magic loses its power as time goes on. Vampires cannot use magic as creatively as mortal mages can. But we will never suffer paradox, which means that you can use your powers anytime you want, in any circumstance, and they will not fail you, ever. And that's a great power, an absolutely fantastic power. And the ways you can use the blood are very varied. I will talk to you about that a bit more in depth another time. Let's just say that the powers of the blood not just can make you absolutely superhuman in strength, resilience and speed. No, they can actually allow you to read the minds of others, perceive ghosts, which is kind of necessary if you want to summon demons. It allows you to manipulate people in a masterful way. You can not only read their minds, you can influence their minds, you can command and dominate their minds and make them do things that you want them to do. You can summon fire and lightning and frost and other things to aid you. You can summon up storms, you can walk on water. A few, the Salubri, can even heal with those powers. Others command the weather, yet others have masterful abilities of commanding the dead and reanimating them. Others are able to make illusions into reality and make their very thoughts become real. Others can turn themselves into animals or command animals and have them as their aid. Yet others command the very shadows in the dark. But that is an interesting thing, you see. They can make vampires fear the dark, which is quite fun. That aside, there is powers even more exotic than these that I will speak about sometime. Let's just say the powers of the blood come in many different ways, and which you have easiest access to. You see, you can in theory have access to all the powers if you know how to. But the important thing here is that depending on which clan, which type of vampire you are, you have easier access to some of them and harder access to others. Of course you don't really know what a clan is either. You see, Cain had childer, and those had children again, and those sired even more children, and every time there had happened something with the blood. The thicker your blood is, the closer you are to Cain, the more powerful and potent it is. And if something happened in your life that really changed you in undeath, you may develop new powers of the blood and give them to your offspring if you sire new vampires. That's how the clans came to be. They all go back to a third generation vampire who had these changes in the blood and passed them on to their offspring. The clans are usually said to be 13, but that's more a convention than a rule. What is a clan and what is not changes as well. You see, originally the idea was that you can only be a clan if you claim one of the 13 antediluvians as one of your ancestors. I mean, direct ancestors that actually influenced your blood. However, there have been ways where upstarts like the Tremere diablerized, that is, when you completely drink out a vampire, you gain their, well, potential of the blood, the thickness of their blood, their generation. You can, it's not a must. That said, you gain also access to powers that they wielded. However, I advise you to never ever do that. Because, first of all, it will be visible in your aura. Second, it's one of the worst crimes you can commit as a vampire and you will be hunted by pretty much everyone. And most importantly, older vampires tend to be very potent and powerful, and just like Tremere found out when he diablerized Solot, they will take over. You will inhale their blood, their very soul, but you can't digest it. It will be there inside you, lingering, slowly taking over, and after a while they will have full control over your body and your mind, and you will be gone. So be careful whom you diablerize if you ever choose to. But really, don't. At least not without permission, which is another topic. That said though, those clans are really more political unions than anything else, that share a common heritage, just like genetics in humans. And your blood has other powers as well. You see, you can ghoul a human, that is, when you feed a human your blood without actually draining them, they will become addicted to your blood, which can be quite a nuisance by the way. They will fall in love with you. They will gain access to, I'd say, the so-called primary disciplines, which is the height and strength, speed, and of course, resilience. Ghouls age slower or might even stop aging as long as they get the blood regularly. They have some access to powers, and you shouldn't underestimate ghouls. They can kill you just fine. That said though, your own ghouls are 100% loyal to you. You can demand pretty much anything of them and they will do it, because they are so deeply in love. This also kind of works with vampires. If you feed another vampire your blood 3 times in 3 consequent nights, they might actually fall in love with you too. But beware, that's usually not something you want. In special because after 1 year of not drinking your blood, they can break free of that bond and they might not be quite pleased with what they had to do while they were under your thrall. That said though, it is a usable tool in order to corrupt others. You just have to be quite intelligent about actually feeding it to them without them noticing. I think some time passed. We will continue this lesson very soon. Let me just say for the end that becoming a vampire is something that you can never undo. Once you are one of the undead, there's no turning back. Absolutely no way to ever go back to full human. However, there are things that allow you to be a bit different. We Bali ascend to demonhood from time to time, making us more spiritual than physical beings, and upon death we will just go to hell with infernal ranking to the other demons and be able to be summoned again and possess another body, making us even more immortal than vampires are. And there is this rumor that of Golconda, which the Salubri brought up, and no one except for one ever actually achieved, which is a state of being so one with your beast that you overcome all the problems that vampirism brings with it. You become immune to the sun, you will never be ridden by the beast ever again. You can walk at daylight with no problems. But you have still all the advantages of being an undead. But Golconda is not worth pursuing. As I said, only one person ever reached that. Oh yeah, important note. You can sleep anywhere. You don't have to sleep in a sarcophagus or anything like that. You don't have to have a coffin in your living room or something like that. Most myths that I heard about vampires are just not true or only apply to one of the clans I mentioned. You should train a lot how to blink, because that will also help you feel and appear more alive. The older you get, the less human you are, and the more you forget what it was to be human, which is why so many of the older vampires, usually at a millennia old, tend to be very out of touch with not only people but the world itself. They are so monstrous they usually don't even know what a human is anymore, as in their heart and soul. And they don't care about them either. Well, I don't, at least. And this will come for you too. Also, as I said, you can gain sustenance from vampire blood as well, but for many reasons you shouldn't even try to. With all of that said, I think you'll end this for tonight and leave the Sanguine Archives for today. I hope you learned something, and don't forget that it was I, or Carisper, the main scribe of the Sanguine Archives, giving you this lecture. Don't forget, you can actually become a part of the Sanguine Archives as a sub-scribe in the archives, helping to translate texts and putting them into digital form. If you decide to leave, do not forget to use the magical gesture of the thumbs up when you go upstairs to deactivate the magical wards and traps, and be protected from them. When you reach the door, ring the bell so it actually opens. And finally, tell your friends about this place, because knowledge is power, and if you give them power, they owe you. Have a good night.